Thank you all for coming. We're going to have a little intimate chat. To my left, I'd like to introduce Alfred Hitchcock's granddaughter, Tere Carrubba. Welcome. So we're going to talk about a few things, and then of course we're going to open it up to you all because I know you have some questions. We've opted in not to talk about Hitchcock's films because goodness knows we could spend a few days talking about Hitchcock films, and more on, I've asked Tere to talk about her grandfather. What are some of the things that we don't know? I've had the pleasure of getting to know Tere over a little over a year now, and just every time we meet we talk a little bit more and more about her grandfather, and I have to say there's some very, very endearing stories that we're going to share with you today. So again, welcome, Tere. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, there's been a lot written. I can't even imagine what it's like to have a famous grandfather or parent or sibling or anything. But I would imagine that a lot of times you think, who wrote that? What is that about? That's not my grandfather. So tell us in your words, how would you describe your grandfather?
Well, as a grandfather, he was the only grandfather I ever knew because my father's family was back east. And he was just a really loving, he cared about what my sisters and I did. He was always very engaged in our lives and wanted to know what we were doing and how to do it. And, he was grandpa.
And you told me recently that he had a real love of animals. And you told me the beautiful story about your rabbit.
Yes. Yeah. He adored, I think his biggest passions in life were, my grandmother, his animals, and cooking. But he loved his animals. And when I was in my 20s, I had a pet rabbit that I had in my apartment in LA. And Fred, my rabbit, passed away. And my grandfather called me that night and said, your grandmother and I don't want you to be alone. Do you want to come over and spend the night here? Because we know how hard it is to lose an animal. And I said, no, Grandpa, it's okay. I'm all right. I'll be okay. But that's just kind of the person he was as a grandfather. So.
I think often we forget about people like Alfred Hitchcock is actually having families and time to have families, right? But because he was such a prolific filmmaker. More than 50 films over 60 years. And he was an immigrant to America. Today is, this film is part of our Vilcek Foundation sponsored program. And the Vilcek Foundation out of New York City is a phenomenal organization that champions the contributions that immigrants or new Americans have made to the areas of art and science, and in our particular case, film, cinematic arts here in America. And Alfred Hitchcock is certainly one of the most famous examples of that contribution. But you told me, the other day I asked you, what was it like for your grandfather? When did he come to America? What was that like? And just tell us a story about that.
Well, he was obviously born in London and came over to work for Selznick in the probably early 40s. But when he became a citizen, he had to come in. He couldn't come in through Ellis Island because their quota had been met. So he went down through. He had his driver drive him down to Tijuana, and he actually is an immigrant from Mexico. That's how he got his citizenship, was driving through Tijuana, and he was now a citizen of the U.S., which he was unbelievably proud of.
I did admit I laughed out loud when she told me. I said, so that's amazing. I'm sure there's a lot of Mexicans that would be very, very proud of that at that point. So. And became a U.S. citizen in 1955, and as you say, it was a very proud moment for him, and for, I think, our country as well. So, now, I think I shared with you that I saw the Hitchcock film premiere in Shanghai with Dame Helen Mirren, and immediately, you had this look on your face, and I was like, what? And you're like, well, I've never seen it. And there's a reason for that. And I find it's interesting to me because I think we all just take it for granted that, well, surely they did their research and surely they got it right. But then, of course, there's creative licenses and, they didn't quite get it right. So tell us about that, because you and your family you took a stand about the film, and you also have a lot of beautiful things to say about your mom, your grandmother, and your mom. So tell us about your grandmother.
When they first approached us about doing a movie about my grandmother and my grandfather, my sisters and I were a little hesitant to do it. We read the first script of what potentially was going to be the story, and it just wasn't them. I mean, we met with the producers and the directors, and if you did their story, it would have been a love story, because truly they were together every night. They were together every night of their lives. He revered my grandmother. I mean, and it just wasn't what we thought was a true portrayal of their relationship. So we kind of backed away from it because of that reason. It just wasn't them. They made the film anyway. We did not see it. We did not endorse it. I still haven't seen it, and I don't really choose to see it, just because I would prefer to remember their relationship that I saw, which was truly a love story. So that's kind of where we stood on that.
I know the other day you said, you shared with me just how deeply in love they were, and how they were both very creative in their own right, and they met working in that environment, and that they really did work side by side, and they were both romantically and professionally involved, which is unique in any relationship. I think that's a blessing, and it's just I think it's just a funny thing to hear, because I don't think we've actually seen the right story. I don't think we've actually seen the love story of Alfred and Alma. So any one of those screenwriters out there that want to take something, I think you could take that and run with it. Lots of stories to share. I'm going to, and for those of you who are wondering about Pat Hitchcock, your mom, she's still alive. So in case you're wondering about that. But we're going to open it for some questions now, because I know you have some things you want to ask. And the mic is running around. And there we go.
Excuse me. On the film, did not the director or producer acknowledge your point of view about your grandparents?
What I'm sorry, I couldn't. They actually did care, because they wanted us to endorse it, and we just it wasn't them. It wasn't their life. It wasn't even close to what they were like. The two of them. I mean, every night he would come home from the studio, and they would have dinner, and they were home every night. They weren't like a Hollywood couple. They didn't go to parties. They didn't go to premieres. The only time they actually were at those events is that if he had a film that he needed to be at. But other than that, they actually just really enjoyed being with each other every night.
Any changes? Is this on? Yeah, it's on. They wouldn't make any changes, or they didn't try to make it fit your.
No, because it was too boring. I mean.
Well, I think maybe the writers weren't good enough writers in that case. I think a love story is a love story, It's like, thank you.
It just wasn't. They didn't want the real story. They wanted something else, and they wanted to embellish stories.
Thank you.
Who else is out there?
Hello. It's really nice to have you here. It adds such a lovely depth to seeing the film. That film, I thought, was a great balance of like a psychological thriller and some really great comedy moments. So I was wondering if your granddad had some really good one-liners, because that film was full of them.
He actually had an incredible sense of humor. He was very funny. One year, we used to spend, because my mother was his only daughter, we spent all holidays together. I probably saw them at least once a week, all the time. One Christmas, he decided to dress up as Santa Claus, which was actually really comical. Kind of fit the part. But yeah, he was a very funny man naturally.
Yes, I see some up in the front row.
Okay, so one of the things I notice about his movies and that you have reinforced in what you've said tonight is his love for children and obviously his grandchildren as well. And of course, we saw in this movie his little vignette where he puts himself into the movie. We see him stepping out of the elevator with a cigar in his hand and
As he's known
heading
to do.
stage left.
Yeah.
You probably remember that. So my question is, did he ever come to you and say, would you like to have a little part in one of my movies, or did you ever desire that?
I never thought about it, but Alfred was kind of a little bit of a photo bomber, always showing up in
Yeah.
his films.
The original photobomber. We were very young. I was in 3rd grade when he made Psycho, so we were not part. My sisters and I were very young, but as a grandfather, he always wanted to be involved in our lives. When I was in high school, I worked at McDonald's, and he wanted to know everything I had to do at that restaurant. He wanted to know, how did they make the hamburgers? How do they do the fries? How do they do the milkshakes? I mean, he really wanted to be involved in everything that we were involved in because he was very, and him and my grandmother spent a lot of time just making sure that they spent time alone. I have 2 sisters. They spent a lot of time alone with each of us, just wanting to be involved in our lives and what we were doing and how we were doing. And so it was great. I mean, it was wonderful because we were always so close.
Can I ask a question? Hi, I'm the front row. There's a picture that keeps cycling where you're holding tickets. I was wondering, where was that? Because you had mentioned that you didn't go to premieres. And I was wondering, did your grandfather did you understand how famous and great he was in the public?
I think the picture you're talking, that one, that was actually my sister and I in high school. We were doing a raffle for our school, and he wanted to be a part of it. And so that was one of the publicity photos. But, I mean, when I was in high school, he came to my school one day, one night for an event, and him and I went, just the 2 of us, and throughout the dinner, people kept coming up and asking for autographs, which was fine. He knew that. And this was in the 70s, so it was his fame was at his peak. And I looked at him at one point and I said, Grandpa, does it bother you that all these people are asking for autographs? And he goes, you know what? Without these people, I'd be nothing. He goes, this is why I am famous. I make my film. He never cared about award. He never won an Academy Award. He was, but he didn't make it for the accolades. He actually made every movie for all of us, for the audience. That's who he made movies for. He could have cared less if a critic liked it. I think Psycho at the very beginning was panned by the critics, but that wasn't important to him. What's important was that people went there and saw the movie and enjoyed it.
Although 2 Golden Globes, 8 Laurel Awards, 5 Lifetime Awards, even a BAFTA Academy Fellowship Award, and knighted, I remember you telling me the story about when he was knighted, I think you went for this, Knight Commander of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire. Only the Brits can say that. So definitely it's nice to hear that because he is a master. He certainly deserved that. But I loved everything you told me. He was such a realist. He was really just about just the art for the people. And I really appreciate that. There's another question over here to the right, I believe. Did I miss somebody?
I was glad to hear that your grandfather loved animals. I was curious about his relationship to birds. Yeah.
Oh, tell him about the birds. You know how.
That actually is one of my favorite movies, but that was one of the few sets that we actually went on with him as they were shooting the birds. We met the gentleman who trained a lot of the birds, but most of the birds, like when the kids were running down the street and the birds were attacking him, they were fake birds, and they had wires attached to their fingers, like probably fishing line, which is clear. So when they went as the kids were running and they went like this, it looked like the birds were attacking them, but they were all fake. Which is good, they were children.
You won't watch that the same way again, will you?
Hi.
The Band-Aid.
There's three of us, and that's my older sister, and then myself with the Band-Aid on, and then my younger sister. She's not any. She was a lot younger. She was younger than us, so she was probably a baby when most of those pictures were taken.
I wanted to ask a question.
I've been asked a lot of why any of us did we ever get into the entertainment industry. We weren't discouraged, we weren't encouraged, but none of us really had the passion for it. And I mean, after being, especially at this festival where I've met some incredible filmmakers, you really need to have a passion to do it. None of us did, although probably the closest any of us got to the entertainment industry is my younger sister, Katie, is a lawyer for DreamWorks. So that's about as close as any of us ever got to the entertainment industry. Just for lack of passion, we've met, like I said, incredible filmmakers at this festival who should be, and it's a tough industry. It's a tough industry.
Yes, it is.
Hi, a question over here, please. Thank you so much. I hope you're enjoying your time in the islands. And I wanted to ask, you talk about the birds. I was just wondering if there were any movies that your grandfather didn't want you to watch growing up, say, in your high school years, or I don't know. There must be some story like that.
He never wanted to, it was interesting because he was grandpa. None of it ever scared us because we knew him and it wasn't scary for any of us. I think one of my favorite movies was Strangers on a Train, which my mother was in. Not that she was my mother. She is my mother, but she was great in that movie. She was also in the Janet Leigh Secretary in Psycho. But she actually said, as an actress, for her, the hardest part was working for him because he was a lot harder on her than he was on a lot of the other actors and actresses that he worked with. So she definitely she worked her way. But no, there was nothing ever he said, no, don't watch. And even the first time I saw Psycho was young, probably a young child. It never scared me because I knew him. So, yeah.
We see you. Right there, chair right.
Right here in front?
Yep.
You said your grandfather was proud to get his American citizenship. Was he eager to leave Britain, or what drove him from Britain and to move to the States and seek American citizenship and give up his British citizenship?
Originally, he was hired by David Selznick to come over in the 40s to work, and he had a work visa. Him and my grandmother, my mother, they loved it here. They embraced the citizenship. All three of them became citizens of the United States. So originally, work brought him over here, but I think that he just loved they all loved the United States. So yeah.
It's on. He meets a lot of the Hollywood movie actresses, beautiful ladies. Which one is his favorite movie star at time?
Can you repeat the question, please?
He meets a lot of the actresses at time, beautiful actresses in Hollywood. Which one is his favorite star, actress?
His favorite actress?
Yes.
Oh, now there's an interesting topic.
I would probably say Grace Kelly and Ingrid Bergman. Those were probably his two favorite actresses to work with, and he worked with more than one time. So yeah, I think those were his two favorite, and they actually, the two of them became lifelong friends of him and my grandmother throughout all their lives.
He always got really, really good results out of his actresses and his actors. I mean, really, really good results.
That is my grandfather, Grace Kelly, my grandmother, and Prince Rainier, Grace Kelly's husband. That was at their house in Santa Cruz.
Because that's how you grew up.
Well, I actually wasn't there that trip, but yeah, that's who that is.
Anyone else? In the back.
Sorry. I was just kind of curious what kind of storyteller your grandfather was in everyday life when he wasn't behind the camera.
You mean like home, for example?
Yeah.
What kind did he tell stories well at home, that kind of thing?
No, actually, he never did. He never was a storyteller. He was always to him, it was very important to tell it. I remember I think it was a Thanksgiving, maybe a Christmas that we spent together because we spent all our holidays together, said, "You know you are our only friends." So he wasn't a storyteller around us. I think that was his work, and he really separated work from home life. He definitely made that distinction. When he was home, and he was with family. He was with my grandmother, or my sisters, and I, my mother, and my father. So he definitely separated work and home.
It's hard to do. Yes.
Did he have a favorite movie of his that he ever shared with you?
His favorite movie was Shadow of a Doubt, which was filmed in Santa Rosa, California. I think that was his favorite movie to make, and his favorite movie, which I believe has been remade since then.
Mm-hmm.
The last movie he made, I believe, was Frenzy, which was made in 70, I believe like 71 maybe. That was the last movie he ever made. You know what? He never retired. He didn't want to retire. It was his life. He knew nothing else but that. And he died in April of 1980. Universal was wonderful. They never gave up his office until he passed away, even though he physically was not able to go to the studio. They, out of respect, kept his office exactly the same in case he ever went back, which he never did. But it was a great tribute to him and their feelings towards him.
That's really lovely to hear, because Hawaii has a long relationship with Universal Studios, and it's nice to hear those kinds of stories. We have time for one more question. Say it again. Can't hear you, sorry. Oh, his favorite director.
I don't know if he had a favorite director. I've had conversations with my mother about current directors, who would he have liked. I think the director that today is most like him would be Steven Spielberg. As far as the type of work they did, and I think they would have liked each other. a lot. I think Stevens, when my grandfather was making movies, he was kind of coming up the ladder, so to speak. But I would think he would be most, I think my grandfather would have liked his movies.
Wow, that'd have been amazing to see what the two of them could have done together. And Hitchcock Truffaut, a documentary that launched at Cannes this year. If you haven't seen it or you don't have a chance to see it, when it becomes on VOD, see it. It's a really, really, really good documentary that I highly suggest. I think your sister saw it.
My sister saw the Hitchcock Truffaut movie and said it was unbelievable. Out of my three sisters, I'm usually the most critical of stuff about him just because I'm really protective of him and his legacy. She said it was unbelievable. She goes, "You will love it. You will love it." Unfortunately, my husband and I have to leave tomorrow, but I will definitely see that because probably in San Francisco, where it's close to where we live, it's supposed to be fantastic. So I would encourage anybody to go see it. I wish I could.
Thank you. I didn't pay her to say that, by the way. So one last screening. I'd like to thank you all for coming tonight, and I would just say personal mahalo nui loa to you, my dear friend. Thank you very, very much for coming out and sharing the insights.